I'm 23 years old and I currently travel the world creating creatively ambitious opportunities for people online. And here's one thing I've learned. It's that you have to trust your instincts and embrace the mystery that follows. You have to, during this journey of going all in on yourself, you're going to be alone a lot of the times. Not everyone around you that you grew up with is going to believe in what you're doing or even understand what you're doing. And I've learned you need to take that energy that you'd often spend explaining it to them and put it into what you're actually building and identifying your purpose and your plans for execution on this path. Because as soon as you start doing that, the people, the opportunities, the experiences, they simply start to present themselves and you have to follow them. So if somebody approaches you that wants to help you grow your thing and you have to travel to go get there, this opportunity didn't exist before you started pursuing your passion. So embrace the mystery and get after it, because life gets a lot more exciting when you do that.
All right, we are live. Sam, welcome to the show, man. I'm so excited to get to talk to you. For those of you that do not know, Sam is and I don't want to butcher it, he is the head of content and media production over at Martell Media. And he has a pretty good following on Instagram, tracking that story. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to Sam just because with videographers in this industry being social media and being what we see as, $700 billion plus industry, guys that are live in the field growing are always cool to talk to. So Sam, thanks for sitting down with me, man. The first question I have for you is, what is top of mind as we head into the back half of this year?
Yeah, man, appreciate you having me on. 700 billion, it's a big number. I've never heard it. Closing up on a trillion, that's sick.
Yeah.
I mean, top of mind, I think just the opportunity with a lot of creatives coming up on the scene, because it's never been easier to blow up. People think it's harder. I think it's never been easier. I mean, just because you talk about the media space being bigger, but the coaching space is growing too. So I think just having media support, a lot of knowledge exchange, whether it's free or paid, in the future, only going to get bigger in the back end of this year. Just having access to that knowledge, like I don't know how old you are, but when I was growing up, I couldn't buy a course on making better videos. Like, I was looking for it and I could not find a course to get better at what I was doing. I could go to school, I could try to find a mentor, but I couldn't go out and pay for somebody else's hard-earned expertise that they spent 10, 15, 20 years building, plus get on a fucking Zoom call with them.
Yeah.
Like, that's a steal to me, right? So nowadays, like, I'm buying everything. I'm buying all the courses. I'm buying all the creators that are in the space changing lives, that have figured out the small nuance behind why certain content pops and other content doesn't. So I think that's what's top of mind for me, is in the next 6 to 12 months, I think a lot of knowledge exchange is going to happen over the internet. And I mean, I'm paying top dollar to get on some Zoom calls with some really cool people. And it's an exchange that I think we have the privilege of being able to being a part of, because it wasn't the case when I was growing up.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. When you talk about, like, when could you could pay $6,000 to go on a podcast that's going to see 500,000 views, when in the past you would pay 100x that for a Super Bowl commercial.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's amazing now. They talk about it being the free marketing for those that are always starting. And as I'm sure being behind the camera and, creating a lot of content, like, once you start talking about what it is that you're doing, people start to buy in, and, it's the simplest way to start. These opportunities didn't exist. But I am curious, to answer your question. I'm 23, but
Heck yeah. We're the same age.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
23.
Sweet. Good deal, dude. And I'm glad you had touched on how you see the market changing, because I was actually going to ask you that towards the end, but we can talk about this now with AI. And, obviously, you managing a team and you guys probably having to expose yourself to new tools. Is it a lot, like, what's your perception of it? What's your, like, I want to get a temperature read. Does it seem like a lot of chaos? Does it seem super useful? And how are you,
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get lost in AI for sure. Uh, as as our team grows, obviously we have to find places to unlock efficiencies, because both in the creative pursuit or even just automating mundane tasks, AI is extremely important in our workflows. So, I mean, ever since ChatGPT came out, Dan made it mandatory for the whole team to use it daily, even just practicing. So a lot of our team is very proficient in just talking to language models. And as far as integration, we use custom APIs within our tools to plug in what we call AI co-pilots for a lot of our roles in the company. And it started with some of our chat team on the sales team, and then in the media team, just pre-processing, tagging content, making sure that even just the new, like the smaller tools that people don't know about, like just filling like audio, generative voice. We use it a lot for mistakes whenever Dan or another talent that we use have messed up, and then we have to instead of reshooting, we just literally run it through the tool. And yeah, it's super big for us. I think it's going to get bigger, especially in the next year or two. It's only going to get more useful. But yeah, we try to keep it top of mind as a team, because yes, the more we can automate what a human would do, the more we can unlock creativity for us to focus on bigger and better things, right? Because I'm not trying to replace people, I'm just trying to enable them. And as Dan likes to say, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI is going to take your job.
Yeah.
So we're just building in those co-pilots, so our team have extra horsepower to run with. And as far as the full media production line, I think as long as humans are creating or consuming content, humans are going to create content, because I do see a discrepancy between, let's say you use a tool like Munch and they pull clips, and I look at 90% of those clips, or even sometimes 100%, and they're shit. And I'd send them to my timestamper and he pulls clips and they're fire. It's because he has a high level of EQ, which AI doesn't. They have decent IQ. The emotional intelligence isn't there yet. And honestly, I don't think it's going to get there, just because they don't have that understanding of culture, context, nuance that people have. So
yeah.
if you're listening to this and you're scared, like if you're scared, you're like, oh, I'm scared of AI, let's just focus on that. Like focus on the creative pursuit, focus on creating stuff that people enjoy watching, that feel things, emotions when they watch it, and they'll be fine.
Yeah. And like, I like that you touched on both sides to it, because there's ways that AI can enable you and make life easier. And there's ways that you might see as a shortcut on paper that aren't necessarily going to touch the quality you would have touched if you would have just had an hour of your own intuition. And I think that's really important when it comes to art and creativity. And like, I see content creation as art. Like, these people are artists. These are visual expressions of how we see the world and what we want to communicate, to millions of people, potentially. And then when it comes to like sales scripts, great. It's information and it's more efficient than going through 10 pages on Google. And if you ask it to sound like Jeremy Miner or do it from his perspective, it's going to give you something pretty damn close. And that's super powerful, because we didn't have that 5 years ago, really. Cool. Now, I do want to talk
100%.
about just, no, you can, feel free to add to that.
No, just on that, like copywriting is the biggest, and I didn't even mention that, but like my writing team is 10 times more productive than it used to be, right? Because we have these new tools and these new language models that we've trained, like you said, to speak like our talent, which is Dan. And even though it's not perfect, like we still have to edit, but at least we're not authoring it, right? Which makes it super cool.
Yeah. And now I like that we're like hitting on things that are trending, and, we really covered that in the first 10 minutes, but, just briefly, kind of your origin story. I think the best way to phrase this question is maybe an important event from your past that you think has, contributed the most to where you're at now?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people get confused where like, I'm a 23-year-old managing people twice my age. And yeah, they're asking why. I started working for Dan about 7 years ago. I was 16 years old. And I like to say he kind of built me into the person I am today. Kind of like a super soldier, you'd say. And yeah, I've definitely grown over the past years. But yeah, when he found me, I was a shell of the person I am today. Didn't have any confidence, couldn't look anybody in the eyes. And through the years of me being his videographer, me being by his side, his brand growing, obviously, I started working for him. He had around 9,000 followers on Instagram, and now we have over 500,000. So we've definitely seen a lot of growth on that side, especially in the last 18 months. Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a struggle. One event that I think probably shaped that was when I shared with him that around that same time, I think I was only on the team for 3 months and I was struggling with anxiety. And I'm like, hey, dude, like I have a really hard time with my mental health. And Dan's just asked me 3 questions. He said, do you work out? And I was like, no, I don't work out. And he was like, do you eat healthy? No. He was like, do you journal? Like, no, I don't journal. He's like, do those 3 things and watch your life transform. And I didn't think anything about it at the time. And that day literally changed my life. I went from barely being able to get out of bed some days to fucking attacking the day and building an empire with him. And through that, got my first direct report, hired my first editor, scaled the media team from, at that point, we're 3 people to today over 15. So it's been a cool journey.
Yeah. And now I want to ask you, what do you think he saw in you at 16, sitting here, like admitting, like potentially riddled with anxiety and, interesting enough, not going to the gym, not necessarily taking care of yourself. And Dan is somebody like probably at, not the level he's at now, but still at substantially high level. Like, what do you think he saw in you then?
Yeah, I think potential. I think he was reminded, although I didn't go through the same struggles as he did. For those who aren't familiar with Dan's story, he's been in jail twice by the time he was 17. I went to rehab, discovered coding, and became successful in the back end of that. But he definitely saw some potential. I think I see a lot of that potential in the kids I mentor today. We have a program called Kings Club where we invite people in our city, men aged 13 to 18 years old, and we pour into them. So we actually have an event on Friday. We're going to have over 100 kids in the theater, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think potential. And I think that comes from, I see a lot of potential around me. But obviously action is what I had to do on my side. And I was blessed enough to have, hard work as a character trait, I guess, early on. And I knew I didn't know the things that I needed to know to get to the next level. So started working on that. And yeah, I think the big thing was potential.
And now, did you just meet him like spur of the moment? Can you talk about how that opportunity came about? And we'll kind of,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was in the film industry pretty early on. Kind of soft. I was not a hard dropout, but I was kind of a soft dropout, like to call it. I finished my high school, but I didn't go to school a lot. And I was in the film industry in Toronto and met some people. And in the city we lived in, Moncton, New Brunswick, which is a small city on the East Coast, by happenstance, I start working for a guy in the industry that had Dan as a client at the time. And somehow, some way, I get to go on a trip to shoot with Dan, and I met him for the first time in Toronto. And after a few months of that, that person was contracting work to Dan, transitioned off, and had an opening for a full-time videographer. And I met Dan once at the time, and I just figured I'd throw my hat in the bucket. I was very young and very not unexperienced, although I'd been shooting and editing for a little bit at that point. And yeah, I remember when we got on that first interview, he just looked at me and he said, I mean, you're young. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I don't know if that's good. And I'm like, let's see. So then he gave me a shot, and I don't think he regrets it.
Yeah, no kidding. And that is totally the mindset, because I'm just like now thinking to myself at 16 and we were there. at the same time, just thinking like, well, I'm here. Like I was the type to go like I turned 14. I read online you could get a job at 14, and I walked around my tourist town until I found a job I could get at 14. And it was the same thing. They're like, "What college do you go to?" And I'm like, "Dog, I'm like freshman in high school."
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, "What do you mean?" But it's cool because you see what that cultivates into. Now, I had the opportunity on this last call. Dan gave a great mastermind chat with our A players group, and I asked him, if he could ask you one question. I did tell him it would be anonymously, but I think it just makes sense now to loop it in. What would he ask you? And it was, how would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah. My leadership style or Dan's?
Yours.
Mine.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'll just paint the picture for how I used to lead and then how I show up today. I used to think that I needed to be involved in every single piece of the production line for a product to be great, whether it's a video, a piece of copy, an image. And only about a year ago, I came to the realization that bad leaders obviously create followers, blind followers, and good leaders create insightful followers, people that think on their own. But a true great leader creates other leaders. And I had to put my ego aside and put my pride aside and decide that I couldn't be the person with all the answers. And I couldn't be the person to lead 1,000 soldiers into battle, because at that scale, there's too many people reporting to me. So I think before, where I used to want everybody on my media team to report to me, and I would do the one-on-ones, and I would do the performance reviews, and I would review all the creative, to today where I trust my leaders on my team, select few. Right now I have 2, to push decisions down to the front line and empower them to make decisions that are best for the business. And that's been the biggest unlock. So I'd say, yeah, my leadership style is very, very hands off, and I try to focus on the soft skills of the people that report to me. And I mean, focus on the reporting, the systems, everything around creating good, solid trainings that they can always go back to and train themselves on, and then repeatable systems that they can edit as needed, because in the media space, everything's moving so fast. So that's kind of how I like to lead.
Yeah, I like that. And now, in terms of, because I've personally faced this problem, kind of managing my own team, but yourself, you're always learning and you're probably always finding new ways to solve, I don't want to say old problems, but yeah, like problems you've solved in the past. So you've already trained them one way. And I'm just kind of curious, how do you go about balancing technology and new ways of doing things and the current way of doing things,
Yeah,
and like
100%.
if the talent you have in house is still doing up to par, or if they're still doing them the old way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we innovate every day. We change course every day. I like to train my team on principles, not tasks or activities. So although our playbooks are very detailed, they don't actually tell people how to operate. They just tell them how to think about operating. So I'm not trying to build an army of stormtroopers that can just go into battle and just take orders and do what they've been told to. I want to create an army of Jedi, right, that are insightful, that think about how they're going to operate long term. And whenever we build a playbook or SOP, we always ask ourselves at the top, what are the 3 core principles of this SOP? And then if the tasks or activities have to change along the way, we update them. Because innovation doesn't, like, to have innovation, you have to break some rules. I just want to have people bring the reasons why they broke the rules.
Yeah.
Rules as in the SOPs. So if we have a process of this is how we do things, and you want to test something, go for it. But you better have a really solid reason to do it. And if it works, then that's where the magic happens.
I like that. I like that. I see a real element, a real theme of, thinking about it in your guys's, network community of what you're growing. And it makes sense because I even saw like one of your recent stories. I actually screenshotted it. So it was like fire advice you'd given somebody. about content, and he said, think about the content within the content. I know we only have like 5 minutes here, but like, can you elaborate on that? And then I'll get to like the final question.
Yeah. I mean, people are too focused on lighting, image quality, mics, which are all important, but people forget to read between the lines. And whenever you look at a piece of content, you ask yourself, why did this perform? A lot of the times it's not one reason, it's not two, it's 3 or 4 or 5, and most of it is very gray. It's not black or white. So a lot of what I work with my team on is to think about what are the properties of this video that made it perform. So we have a spreadsheet, super nerdy, that links up all our best performing videos. And then we rank all the metrics on the side and we sort by highest follower added from piece of content. Because I don't give a shit about views. That's a bad way to track content. I care if people actually clicked on follow, because that tells me that they enjoyed the content. Whether people view, like, or comment or share are all arbitrary things. If they go and they follow Dan or the person I'm working for, then that tells me that they really enjoyed the content enough that they want to pour into that relationship. So we rank order all the content, and then we have variables or properties on the spreadsheet that we select that we think is why the video performed. You're not going to be right 100% of the time, but you're taking guesses. And like, I want my team to understand why their content's performing, because then when they see a new piece of content, because we do a lot of repurposed content on Dan's pages, that they see patterns and we can repeat success because we story over and over again. That's literally, I'm not going to throw any creators under the bus, but there's a lot of people out there that just see a formula that works and they keep doing it. You're not innovating. You're just repeating. What we want to do is figure out what are the patterns that work for the content within the content, and how can we repeat those? Because then we can win and win big. Because that's the difference between a consistent videos that get between 10K, 20K views, or you get consistently 50K, 100Ks, and then you get the odd video that pops at 1 million. Guaranteed, most of our 1 million view videos have a very similar structure to them.
Like that. It's super insightful. You can tell when somebody really knows their stuff and is doing these things and like these processes on a daily basis. Because I can gauge 20% of the language some people may not understand. And if you don't understand it, it's because, and this is where I was, like I would say a couple of years ago, you're not doing the things at that level yet. It's when a lot of these things start to come into play. Now, one kind of fun question I throw in here, you could get one question to ask me, first thing that comes to mind.
I mean, I'd be curious what your goals are. I always like to look forward. I always ask people what their goals are.
Yeah, 100%. So right now, I am really focused on, like, I have a financial goal, and I think that's centered around like a lifestyle, I could create to obviously grow the business. I don't know to like mention the number, but let's just put it, between 15 and 30K a month, as far as what I'd really like to be cash flowing, and that's income in terms of so really the realistic business goal is about $50,000 a month in terms of what we're bringing in, recurring. And I think we're finally in a place where we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've just been working on the product, and the processes. So, and we have our first kind of initial batch of clients in. So yeah, it's really pedal to the metal these next 6 months, just trying to hit that goal that I had set out broadly at the beginning of the year. And now seeing it like, okay, like we actually stay focused here. We can actually do this. It's not so much of like a long shot type thing. So yeah, the goal is to scale business close to six, past 6 figures. And that's always been something that's like, prove it.
Yeah.
In that, I call it the prove it year. I've called the last couple of years the prove it year, but I graduated college with a degree. I don't really use it, and it's like prove it, like prove that this was worth it.
And what's the constraints? Like, what do you?
Yeah. So the constraints are, one of them is pure just with the way AI and everything is developing. We're working on building an AI product, and that's the constraint, is that's out of my control. We basically have the web 2 version built,
Yeah.
but we want to kind of build the full scope of it. I've continued to scale kind of the Web 2 way of doing it, and like that element, kind of the done with you. But once the tool's built, it becomes a done for you. More of a, we focus on selling the product, less on servicing clients 24/7. So there is a bottleneck in terms of that, just me not being a software developer. And then knowing that some costs will be associated with, or have already been associated with it. That will come with us just needing to restructure our offer. But the idea behind building this Web 2 model the last 7 months was we're going to have a, beta test of 25 to 50 clients. We can just, roll right into it before we go public with, kind of like this thing actually works. But we are trying to solve a problem in the sales space, and it really just is, people doing their own appointment setting. They have great products, they have great services. They don't have time, and they don't have, they're not spending the time. I don't want to say they don't have time. I'm saying they're not spending the time. And I know your time's short here to, good at sales. So if your product's great, we want to start solving the sales aspect of that.
Well, dude, that's I'm pumped for you, man. Let me know how I can support.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got to bounce. And I will, I'll shoot you this episode over once it's produced.
Cool, man.
And thank you.
Appreciate the time. We'll talk soon. All right.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Peace.